Hi, this is David. Today we're talking about GitHub Copilot. Copilot is a tool that will help you when you're writing your code. It works in a lot of different languages, a lot of different frameworks, and it plugs into a lot of different integrated development environments, IDEs, such as Visual Studio Code. Now, if I'm subscribed to GitHub Copilot, then I can use Visual Studio Code with an extension to help me write this code. If I go down to the extensions right here and search for GitHub Copilot, you can see here it is right here. I've already installed it here, but if you want to look for the one GitHub Copilot from github.com, make sure that it's installed, and now VS Code knows about Copilot and it can help you write code. I am going to start with a PowerShell demonstration, mostly because I'm not that familiar with PowerShell, so I don't use it a lot. And so GitHub Copilot would be really helpful for me. I've got a file here called demo.ps1. PS1 is the default extension for PowerShell. And I'm just going to start typing in some code. $Jan equals 1. I'm assigning the number 1 to a variable called Jan. And then I'll type $Feb equals 2. And now Copilot has figured out a pattern. It sees, oh, I've got a month equals a number, and they both seem to be in sequence. So it says up here that I can accept by pressing the tab key. Let's do that. Tab and go there, and then April equals 4, May equals 5, and so on. It's just writing code for me. All I'm doing is pressing tab and then enter. So it goes from grayed out, meaning it's a suggestion. I press tab, it's now actually typed in to this, and I'll do this for all 12 months of the year. And this is pretty good, but why don't I instead, you can see it's still suggesting other things as well. Let me just hit enter right here to see what's going on. It's incrementing months by 1 at a time. I don't think I want to do that. Instead, I'd like to create, instead of having 12 variables, maybe a single hash table with 12 elements. That might be useful. So I could put a comment in here and say something like, create a hash table with months and their corresponding numbers. All right, right here. And there it is. It's all grayed out. So suggestion, as soon as I press tab, then it becomes actual code that's typed in here. Pretty nice. And if I press enter down here, you can see access the hash tables, suggesting some other things, writing out, for example, what's the value of the month of January, the month of February, and so on. I don't think I want all those here, so I'll go on down here. And this is all pretty good, but let me delete this, and I'll do something that's a little more practical to my job. I'm going to work with Azure. So I'll just put in a comment here that says log into Azure. How about that? And AZ login. I could have looked that up, but here it is, it's typed before. In fact, you can see there's one of 2 samples. I could use that one, or I could use connect AZ account. Either one will work. I'll use this one right here. I'll accept it by pressing tab right there. And then it's actually suggesting, well, maybe the next thing I want to do is create a resource group. All right, let's take that comment. And there's the code for creating a resource group. Maybe I want to create a virtual machine. Sure, why not? There's the code for creating a virtual machine. And you notice that it made assumptions in here. I said create a resource group. It made up a name for the resource group. It put it in the East US. That might not be what I want. I could go and edit it after the fact, either to correct a mistake that it made, because remember, it's not 100% always accurate. You're still the pilot. It's just the co-pilot. Or maybe I want to be more explicit about this. So why don't I do this? I'll say get rid of that and say create a resource group named GCastRG in the West US location. Let's do that. And now, because I gave it that information, it's a bit more deliberate about what it's going to create. Things like that. If I want to do something like, oh, look at this, open port. I like this. This is a pretty good suggestion. Open port 80. There's the code, open port 80 to allow show the details of the VM. These are all pretty good things. Maybe I want to get the current subscription. It knows I'm talking about an Azure subscription here, and there it is. That's the code to do that. Another way you can access GitHub Copilot is using this little star thing here. Just click on that and a dialog box opens up, and you can put my comment in here. So just say something like, before we created a resource group, just explicitly, but that would fail if that group name already exists. Maybe I want to say create a resource group only if the group does not already exist. That seems like a little bit safer. Fetching the response, and you can see it typed up some code here. It said, here's the group name right here. And if not existing group, then we'll create it. All of those. We'll do a little bit of safety here. I can select discard. I can say accept. I can actually click regenerate. Maybe I don't like what it did right here. I want a different one. But I'll click accept and do that. Now I've got a little bit safer one right here. Maybe I want to call that one GCast RG2 instead of GCast RG, like this. So that's another way of accessing it. And finally, we have this section down here, Chat GitHub Copilot. And that is also, I could also type in some comment right here, but it has some special commands in here that I can access just by using slash. And in slash right here, I can, for example, highlight, let me highlight all this code first. Right here, and do slash tests. And by adding that, then it can generate a bunch of tests for me to automate a test that'll test this code and validate it. So I put it here in this chat window like this. And I'll just grab all these. Let's wait till it finishes. Gives a little warning here that these tests are quite basic and don't cover everything, but they will get you started. They'll get you quite a ways there. So what I'm going to do, I can expand this and make it a little easier. That's about as big as it gets. And copy all of this stuff here. Control C, come down to the bottom here, or maybe I want to add another file, call it demo-tests.ps1. And in here, it's using this tester module here to mocking out Azure. And then there's some tests right here. And again, they might not be perfect. Maybe you want to tweak them, but they're a good start for writing tests. And I don't need to go down to this section here to do the command. I can also do the same thing from right click here, Copilot, start inline chat. And there's even a few shortcuts right here. Let me do this. Let me go up to the demo PS1 and I'll highlight the whole thing here and then just right click, say Copilot, explain this. And you can see that it's creating some text here, some English language text using its power of the large language model. It's telling me exactly what this code does. This would be really useful if you were to inherit someone else's code or you wanted documentation for your code, anything like that right here. You could copy this and paste it into your documentation, into a README file, maybe something like that, or maybe just read it just so you understand someone else's code a little bit better. And finally, I just want to show you that if I right click on here and say Copilot, there are these things here, explain this, fix this, generate docs. They're also available inside of this chat window. If I hit the the / right here, I get the same options right here to do this. So for example, fix this is one. And if I, for example, had a typo in here where I misspelled create, then I could Copilot fix this, and hopefully it'll be smart enough to say, all right, I would correct the typo in AZ group create, and it'll tell me how it's going to fix it. I got rid of that extra T. And if I didn't like that, I could regenerate it right here, but it came with the same thing. That's a pretty clear typo. I'll accept that and it fixes it right here. So we've got a lot of options about how we're going to access GitHub Copilot, but the bottom line is it's going to either create code, enhance your code, correct your code, and always keep in mind it is the Copilot. You're in charge. You always want to double check this. In this video, I've shown you how to use GitHub Copilot to work with a PowerShell script, create some tests, write some code, and document that code. In the last video, I showed you how to use GitHub Copilot to generate code, document code, improve code, test code. It uses generative AI to do all these things, and it does it pretty well. However, what if you have your own way of coding? Maybe you have a way of naming variables, you have patterns that you like to use, maybe there are libraries that you prefer to use. Can I adjust the output of GitHub Copilot so it codes in the way that I like to? The answer is yes. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to use an example from this open source repository. It's from GHMSFT InnerSource. And the repository is called Copilot Playground. I'm specifically going to use this follow standards example right here. It was mostly written by this fellow right here, Jonas Helen, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but I want to give that person credit. And I've created a copy of that down here on my desktop. You can see in here, there's a file called storeproxy.cs. This is a C# project. And in there's a method called getOrder. And it uses this HTTP client right here to call a web service like this. It'll call it asynchronously. There's the endpoint, gets back an HTTP response message. And then we want to handle that response. So we want to say handle the response would be okay, but we already know that the GitHub Copilot is better the more explicit we make our prompts. So I'll do this. I'll say handle the case where the response is not HTTP okay. We want to make sure that if it returns HTTP 200, which is the okay response, it'll do one thing, and it returns anything else, we'll assume something went wrong. So let's do that. And so here it did this. And then I'll say read the response and return the order. Here we go. Like that. Oops, tab, enter right there, and return order. Okay, so it's generating these suggestions. I'm pressing tab and I'm accepting them, and this is good. This works. If it's not anything but a 200, the status code is anything but 200 comes back, then I'm going to throw an exception. Otherwise, I'm going to read the response's content as a string and return that right here, this string back. But let's take a look at another file here, pet proxy. Notice that it doesn't do exactly the same thing. It has, if the response is not okay, I get an error message, bad news. It tells me the ID. It tells me the status code. It saves all this in a nicely formatted string. It writes that out to the console, and then it throws an exception. And then before it returns this, it actually writes that message out that says, okay, this was good for this ID. So I'm logging some of this stuff right here. I like this. So the trick is I want to leave this open. Let me delete the code that I generated a minute ago. And now, if I do this, you notice the difference. Now it is actually creating something in the same format. I'll hit tab to accept that. Hit the content as a string, tab return, and I'm accepting that. And now it generated a code that looks very much like this. It uses the same pattern here, where it's logging the information in a nicely formatted way before it returns this order. GitHub Copilot is also smart enough to write code that adheres to tests. So if you're doing test-driven development, this is really useful. If I write a test with expected behavior, then I can have my code adhere to that test. So for example, here in my test store proxy, I've got a test method that says test get order negative ID. And it says, okay, if I call get order and pass in a -1, that I should have this expected error message. Negative values are not allowed. That's what should be returned, should throw that exception. So now I can write some code It should throw that exception right here. I can write some code that adheres to that. If I go back into my store proxy, then somewhere in here, I want to just say handle negative ID value. Enter. And it does a check right at the top. If ID is less than 0, throw new argument exception. Negative values are not allowed. And when I do this, that means that in my test, it's looking for this. It knows exactly what it's looking for. It's going to test for that error message. And that test will pass because that exception will be thrown if I pass it at -1. So in this video, I've shown you a couple of ways of using GitHub Copilot to adhere to your coding standards simply by opening up the files with either examples of those coding standards or some sort of hint of the expectation, like in a test right here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use M365 Copilot to create and modify Microsoft Word documents and maybe do a little extra. I'll start by launching Microsoft Word. Because I have Copilot installed, when I create a new document, sometimes you'll see a dialog pop up automatically, but if not, I can always either click this icon up in my toolbar, or I can press Alt-I to bring up this Draft with Copilot. And using this, I can do something like write a 3-paragraph article about artificial intelligence tools in Azure. Let's do that. Generate that. I'll speed things up a bit so that it doesn't take too long, because sometimes this has to think for a minute. Now you see I've got something here. I can keep it, or I can click this button here to regenerate it, or just delete all the text. But really what I want to do is I want to refine it a little bit. I want to say expand this article to 6 paragraphs. And click the arrow button right there. And again, I'll speed up the video so you don't have to wait for this to think, but it might take a minute. All right, let's go ahead and keep that. Click keep it, and I'll save it. I'm going to save this. I'll just artificial intelligence tools in Azure. That's fine. I'll save it right here. And now that I've saved it, it's actually in my OneDrive, so I can go File, Share, and actually get a link to this. Copy link. There, it's copied. And now that I have a link, I can actually use this in another application. I'm going to launch PowerPoint. Create a presentation here, and then over here, click this icon right here. And you see you have a few options. You can type in text here, but there's some common things you want to do, like create a presentation. It'll ask you for a topic, or add a slide to the current presentation. I'm going to do this, create a presentation from a file, and the file that I'm going to use will be right here. It's suggesting recently opened files, but really what I want is just type this text here, create presentation from file, and then I'll paste in the link that I copied from the Word file. Once again, I'll speed up the generation so you don't have to wait for it. And now you see I have a nice slide deck, even with some appropriate imagery based on the article that was generated through AI. In this video, I've shown you how to create a document in Microsoft Word, how to modify that document, how to summarize it, and how to transform a Word document into a PowerPoint presentation. all using M365 Copilot. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use M365 Copilot to interact with a Microsoft Teams meeting. I'm recording this video through Teams right now. To use Copilot, really all you need to do is have transcriptions turned on. So if you hit record and transcribe, I'm already recording this right now, but I could record and transcribe, or I could just transcribe. That's all you need. You can actually see the transcription showing up over here. Once you do that, you can use Copilot, and I can do that in the middle of a meeting. So imagine if I showed up a few minutes late for a meeting, and I just, tell me, see, I just joined. What did I miss? That might be useful information. If you show up 15 minutes late for a meeting, you want to catch up in a hurry, you don't want to ask anybody or read through the transcript, then you can see right here it's generating a response. And it shows a little bit about what has happened so far in this meeting. Now, it's also useful once the meeting is over, a meeting that you missed. Of course, you can watch the recording if you want, or you can read the transcript. For a long meeting, that might take a lot of time. You might not be interested in all the details of that meeting. You want to just summarize it. So I'll show you that with this meeting that my friends Peter and Lucy and I recorded a couple of weeks ago. And in this meeting, we pretended to organize a conference. It was a call to plan for a make-believe conference. And here's the recording of it. And I can come in here and you can see that there are a couple of links right here, like show highlights, summarize the video. This would be a really common thing. You could type that in or just click on summarize the video. It'll type it for you. But that'd be a really common thing. What was this meeting about? I don't want to watch the entire 2-hour meeting, whatever it is. I just want to know the takeaways of it. And this has already indexed the transcript of the meeting. It knows what it's about, and it's generating something in English because that's what the language of my choice is, and it tells me the things that are right here. It's really cool because not only does it summarize it, and get through is a lot shorter than watching or reading the full meeting, but it also has a link to it. So for the speakers, that we talked about that at the 6 minute 10 10 second mark, and if I click on that and hit play, there I am at the 6 minute 10 second mark right here. Very cool stuff. I can also say something like, maybe I'm only interested in a particular topic, and I can just say, what did we decide about food? Maybe that's the part, and all I really care about is that. Give me a summary just of the food discussion, and not only will it tell me what we talked about when we mentioned food, David will research nearby restaurants to offer pizza salads, etc., but also a link at the 3 minute 29 second mark. I should probably mute this. And there's the link right there, 3 minute 20 second. So if I wanted to hear that particular discussion, I could go here and find more details about it. And finally, maybe I could do something that we didn't explicitly say in the meeting. So if I say, what are the next steps? Well, this video we didn't actually use the phrase next steps in the meeting, but it's smart enough to figure out what we're going to be doing going forward. It'll come up with this. And these are the action items grouped by who. This is what Lucy needs to do. This is what David needs to do here and here. Lucy also is going to do that. Peter is going to do that. And the team as a whole is going to meet next Tuesday. And again, links to those particular spots. If I want to know where I was committed to doing this, sessionize.com, call for speakers, I could read explicitly and get more details right there. So this is really useful information. It's using artificial intelligence to understand not only what the transcript was, and the transcript is not written in a coded language, it's a human readable language, English in this case, and it's outputting things in English as well. So it's a really powerful tool that can increase your productivity. Today we're going to talk about Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio is a low-code solution. You can use it to create AI applications writing little or no code. And we can use it to quickly create and publish a chat service that understands and responds to human readable language, like English. So it can be trained to respond to simple prompts, or we can create workflows to do things like follow-up questions, handle conditional logic, present multiple choice answers. Really just about anything you want is available to you in that workflow. So this video, I'm going to show you how to use Copilot Studio to create an AI-powered chat application that not only does this workflow, but also can answer questions about your own content, such as your websites, your documents, and let's get started. So to get started, I want to navigate to aka.ms/Copilot Studio. That takes me to here. And if you don't have an account, just click on Try Free right here. This will allow you to enter your email address and click Next, and a wizard will walk you through creating up an account. And then it takes a little bit, but once you have it, then you should be able to go back to here and sign in. Click on Sign In. This is, you notice it's in preview right now as of March of 2024, and I'm assuming that's the reason why there's a broken link right here. But if I click on Return Home, this button does seem to work. It takes me to the right place. And here we are right here. It says Overview, and there's some interesting stuff here. If I want to see the copilots that I've already created, I would click on Copilots here. It looks like I only have one so far, but what I want to do to create a new one is just click that New Copilot button. I'll give it a name. I'm going to call this one GCast Copilot. I select what language do I want it to understand and output in. Right now there's these 5 languages. English happens to be my native language, so I'll just select that. And then I can specify a website that I want it to index so that users can ask questions about the content of that website or questions that are answered in the content of that website. I'm going to use my own blog right here, davidgiard.com, and I'll click on Create. And I'll just show you this blog. I've been maintaining this thing for decades, almost 20 years. And there's all kinds of information here. There's videos, there's technical articles, there's some personal thoughts, there's book reviews, all sorts of things are in here. So if you're not just a regular reader, go ahead and check out davidgiard.com. But if I scroll down here, I can scroll just all sorts of hundreds, maybe thousands of articles here, and I can ask questions about that if I want to know, what did David think about this particular book, or what did he write about this particular technical topic? The chatbot should be able to answer that because it's going to index this site. All right, let's go back to here, and my chatbot has been created, and what I really want to do is open up this topics tab. And you notice that the topics, there were a bunch of topics created, 7 topics created right here. Let's look at a couple of them. Some of them are really simple, like greeting. Right here. So if somebody says good afternoon or hello or hi, it'll respond with hello, how can I help you today? I'll look at another one. It's a little bit more complex. How about this one right here? If I say something like buy items or buy product, then it's going to ask, I'm happy to place your order. And then it'll say, to what state will you be shipping? And then your answer is significant. It'll read a string and it'll say, okay, if it's California or Washington or Oregon, go down this path right here and ask, what item do you want to do? But if you're not in one of those 3 states, then it's going to give you another message that says, there will be additional shipping charges. Is this acceptable? And you'll have to answer a Boolean, yes or no. And it depends on what the answer is. The answer yes, it'll start just ask you what product you want. If you say no, then it'll basically say, end conversation, goodbye, and stop right there. So whatever, if you're ready to go forward, it'll ask you, it'll say which product you want to order, and there's a multiple choice selection here, all sorts of things right here, depending on what you want to do. It may have other options based on, responses based on what you selected. So this is a relatively complex workflow in here with some conditional logic and so on that you can do. So that's kind of interesting. But what I think is really interesting is under system, we have this conversational booting that it created. You can create more of these workflows. You can edit them if you want to. But in here, you'll see an example of how it's using AI. So if you ask a question here that it doesn't understand, it wasn't found in one of those other topics, then it will do this generative answers. And the data source, I only gave it one data source right here, and that was my website, somewhere in Internet for public websites. But yeah, there it is, davidgiard.com. And but I can add more to it if I want to. I can add like up to 4 websites to search through, and it'll respond based on that. And if it does find a decent response, it'll display that response right here. All right, so let's see this thing in action. This interface provides a way of testing this Copilot that I've created. I can go over here where it says Test Copilot and click in this chat window right here. And one nice thing to do is just to turn on tracking. What that means is if I say on right here, I should see in this window which of the topics is being used and which step in that topic is being executed. So let me, for example, come in here and say, hi. And that launched the greeting because one of the phrases in here was hi, and that came back with hello, how can I help you today? You see right there, it's being executed. And that's it. That's great. I want to remember lesson 3 was purchase was one of the options right here. And that launched this lesson 3 with conditional variables, blah, blah, blah. And purchase item was one of those things. It was smart enough to understand that purchase matches this thing right here. So it says, I am happy to help you place your order right here. And then to what state will you be shipping? And then I can specify the state. And remember, if I say California, Washington, or Oregon, it'll go straight through. But if I give another state, I happen to live in Illinois, so I'll say Illinois, then it'll go down this path to the right. And it'll say, will there be additional shipping charges? $27.50. Is that acceptable? There's a Boolean response. I'll say, yeah, that's fine. $27.50. I'm totally rich. And ask me, what do you want to buy? There's a few options here. I'll say, laptop computer sounds pretty good. Right here, what items, etc. Great choice, blah, blah, blah. Did that answer your question? I'll say yes. And based on the workflow, the final thing is rate your experience, 5 stars, would read again. And can I help you with anything else? I'll say yes. And I do want to help with anything else. So there's one of those workflows, relatively complex workflow, but here's the cool one, the AI one. What I'm going to do is, remember I have this page right here, or this website right here that I've maintained for a long time. And I happen to have on here a bunch of top articles that I wrote years ago, maybe 15 years ago, on data visualization. And I remember that, so I can say, tell me about data visualization. And because it's indexed my site, I should get some information that's being pulled from that series of articles. And here we go. It's got a summary. It's a representation of data in visual formats, such as charts, graphs, and maps to help people, blah, blah, blah. And there are even links in here to some of those articles. So if I go down to part 3 right here, you can see here's an article that I wrote way back in 2011 that talked about a concept of data visualization. So in your scenario, you might point to your own website or your own documents, and people could ask you, what products do you offer? What? Tell me about your HR policy. Tell me about some success stories of the services that you offer. Things like that. People want to know more about your company. They could, of course, go to your website and browse through and try and find it that way, or they could just ask questions using a natural language like English, something they're used to, and this thing would respond to them in their own language. Very cool. I didn't have to write any code for that. If I want to, I can come back in here and add new topics right here. But or I can go in and edit a topic by coming in here and editing it. All sorts of powerful things that you can do with this. Maybe I'll save that for another video. This is David. Thank you for watching.